welcome back to the shed. Today I want to take a look at the Arthur C. Clarke award-winning novel by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the third and final installment in his final architecture series, Lords of Uncreation. So what I would like to do is provide a bit of a plot overview, talk to what I liked, what I didn't like, and I'll make some recommendations. So if you're watching this video, the chances are you're an Adrian Tchaikovsky fan. You've probably read the first two novels and you're sitting on the fence as to whether or not you should continue. Or you're just having an interest in this series, and this may shed some light as to whether or not it's worth the effort, because there's between 1,500 and 1,800 pages by the time you finish this series. So the third novel is really a continuation of what we found in the second. We have Idris still working on the eye, this originator artifact that helps him and others explore unspace and do some research there to really figure out what's going on. We find that Solus, there's a bit of a faction, a rogue faction within the Parthenon that is causing a whole lot of issues with the Parthenon family there, which really challenges Solus's allegiance to both the crew of the Vulture God, the ship, this relic ship that they're on, salvage vessel, that the wonderful crew of this series is calling home. So she's really struggling finding her identity within the Parthenon and her allegiances to the Vulture God. We also find that the greater hegemony is at war with each other. We have war between the colonials and the Earthlings, and there's all sorts of infighting that really shouldn't be happening, considering they're under this imminent threat of these architects that have been transforming these planets into some kind of, strange art form that is killing all the inhabitants on the planet. We also learned in the second novel that there's some kind of mystery behind these architects, that they're not necessarily the villains in this, but they seem to be driven by something. And the question was asked, well, who are these somethings? What's really driving the architects? And we also find that we have the hegemony, these clam-looking aliens, in a guy called the Razor and the Hook, who's this villain who's got a really interesting story to tell. And he makes an alliance with Ollie, one of the crew members of the Vulture God, and a Kit, one of these alien hamster crab-looking insects, aliens, I should say. So she makes an alliance with this hegemony clam outsider, which drives to some really interesting results, which I think ultimately all these stories come together. And the novel again is told in different points of view by all the different main characters, and I think it was in 4 or 5 parts, but don't hold me on that. But I found that the novel really comes together. It brings all those questions and mysteries that we had in the first and second novel, all comes together, and what I feel leaves no real stone unturned in a series that I think is definitely worth your time in reading. So what is it that I enjoyed in this novel? Look, I think it was the ending. I like the fact that it brought all those mysteries that we learned in the first and second novel. What was driving the architects? What about these originators? What about the alien, the Harbinger that he was called? I can't remember. What was Ash, the Harbinger, right? And all these questions are really answered. And I thought what was a fairly well-paced novel. I thought the pacing was good, but I did really enjoyed just all those loose ends coming together. The other thing I'd like to say is that I really enjoyed the characters. I made an observation in the first novel that I thought they were a bit cliche, that they were just tropes of the genre, but as the novel progressed and as the series progressed, I really found myself enjoying these characters. And we had Idris, who was still the reluctant, really pathetic hero in many ways, and he had this mind that was all messed up. He was like an ancient creature, like he was 100 years old, who hadn't slept a wink in those 100 years because of the surgery that they did to make him an intermediary. But look, but I really did enjoy the characters. I got to know them well, and I really got to enjoy them. I like especially Ollie. I thought Ollie was just fantastic by the third book, and I really enjoyed her relationship with this, the Razor and the Hook, which I also thought was an absolutely classic character. And I really liked the alliance that they made, this axis of alliance that they had between Ollie, Kit, and the Hook and the Razor. So yeah, I really did enjoy the characters in this one, and the pacing, and bringing the mystery all together for us to a really great climatic ending to this novel. So what's there not to like in Adrian Tchaikovsky's The Lords of Uncreation? Look, as a series as a whole, I made a comment in the past, especially in the second book, that I thought there was a fair bit of repetition there of things that we'd already learned, not necessarily in the first novel, but in the actual novel itself, and there was a bit of repetition. And I'd have to say that that was the case in this novel as well. It just somehow, it reinstates what we already learned several times through the novel, and it's not a huge criticism, and I'm not really familiar with Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the first series I've read from him. So I'm not sure if this is something that he falls into the trap of doing, but I definitely saw that in this trilogy, and in particular this novel and the second novel probably more so, where it just reinstates what we've already learned, which sort of emphasizes what I said in the second book, and as a summary for the series in itself. I thought this was a really great concept. I thought it had wonderful, mysteries around it, and it was well executed in many ways, but I just don't think it needed to be a big, 3-book trilogy of books that thick, right? This was 600 odd pages. Just over 600 pages, I think it was. Just on 600 pages. And the other first 2 novels were pretty much the same sort of size, right? And I honestly feel that this could have been a really great 2-volume series, right? It would have just been, I think, perfect pacing, a little less repetition, and for me it would have made it a much more enjoyable series. But that's not to take away anything from this great novel, because I'm going to jump straight into my recommendations and say, can I still recommend this novel? And who would I recommend it to? And the answer is yes, I can still recommend this novel. I found the series to be a joy. I thought the pacing was good, even though I had some of that repetition. But the battle scenes were fine, and this book had me engaged. I read it in about two and a half weeks, which wasn't fast for me, but it was definitely not a slow novel to go through. But so who would I recommend it to? I think the obvious recommendations is to you guys who love space operas. The likes of, Arkady Martin, and I should have put them out so you could have a look at them. But Neil Asher, for example, Peter F. Hamilton, Alistair Reynolds, all these names. If you read these novels from these great novelists and you enjoy their writing, I'd say have a go at Adrian Tchaikovsky. I definitely found the series to remind me all of those things, and I found it to be a thoroughly enjoyable read. The thing that I also liked in here, and I'll make, which I'll talk to in my recommendations, is there's a couple of what I would say homage to some classic science fiction novels in this. One of them was Ringworld, and I'll leave the other one to you to put in the comments if you picked up on it as well. But there was about 3/4 of the way through the book, maybe a little less, but about 3/4 of the way through the book, there was an awesome reference I thought to Ringworld, and there was also another awesome reference to another classic science fiction novel, and I wonder if you picked it up as well. So look, if you like those books, have a go at this one, because it definitely pays homage to 1 or 2 chapters to those particular things. The other thing that I found interesting in this novel, and I'm currently reading that book as well, a bit of a spoiler for what next week's video might reveal, is I saw themes of Ender's Game in this novel by Orson Scott Card, so Ender's Game. I saw sort of the same kind of themes, we're talking about mass extinction of an alien race that we don't really understand, and is that really what we ought to do? Is that the right thing, even if it means sacrificing potentially millions of souls on these planets that are being destroyed by the architects? So I sort of enjoyed that. I did sort of akin it to Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game, with some of the conflict that Andrew Wiggins had in that novel. I sort of saw similarities in this with Idris as well, having to make that decision. Is mass genocide really the answer here? So look, I thought that was interesting as well. So I highly recommend it if you're an Enders fan. I think there's something in here that might just appeal to you as well. So there you have it, another great series by a new author to me, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm really looking forward to reading some other Adrian Tchaikovsky novels. I've got Children of Time on my TBR, which I think I'm going to enjoy, but I'd love to hear your comments. Do you feel this was overrated? Do you think this was not quite on par with Adrian Tchaikovsky's writing in the past? What other great novels by Adrian Tchaikovsky would you recommend? I know of Children of Time, and I'm keen to get stuck into that one. But what would you recommend, being an Adrian Tchaikovsky fan? Is this the best? Is this the worst? Is this somewhere in the middle that you didn't really care for? I'd love to hear from you. And as always, thank you for spending time with me in the shed. And I'll see you next time when we get back to the Sci-Fi Shed ladder and rank some of these wonderful Hugo and Nebula Award winning novels. Till next time, see you then.